Awesome.
Sweet.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to another exciting edition of the Reverend and the Reprobate. I will be playing the part of the Reverend tonight. Here with me always is Danley Gibson. And
I'm the
Kyle,
bad guy.
I made it.
Kyle didn't make it tonight. So all of you
All the
who have
bathroom problems are cleared up.
Everybody who's been praying for Kyle's bathroom issues over the last couple of weeks.
This is an inside joke, apparently, and I'm not even a part of it, so don't feel bad.
Oh, welcome. We've got with us tonight a guy who shared an incredibly inspiring and harrowing story on another podcast, and I felt like we needed to have him on. Steve Reiter with Never Alone, a father of two, has spent several years working. He worked with James Dobson, worked with a really cool organization called Holy Smokes, which I think Charles Spurgeon would love, though my mother might not be a giant fan of. But that's okay.
My mom either.
Yeah, they don't have to come. That's one of the cool things about it. It's faith, friendship, and no moms. I think that's the last bit of the thing. So
no, there are some moms that come.
There's some moms that come.
The great thing is that often they're either cool with cigar smoke or they're smoking themselves.
Hey, there we go. All right.
Yeah.
My mom found one of my tobacco pipes and threw it away. She's not a good candidate
this was
for this
last
club.
week, so
Yeah.
So as pastors, as husbands, as fathers, your story really touched me. And as I was talking to Kyle and Danley about it, and what it is that you're trying to do is to create legislation for patients that are hospitalized, especially during a pandemic, but would basically give people the right to have one screened visitor per day per patient in a hospital, at least. Right.
Yeah.
So how did this become such an important part of your life, and what was your journey like to get to this point, if you wouldn't mind sharing your story with us?
Yeah. So I really kind of stumbled into it. I had a sick wife who had dealt with autoimmune issues and pulmonary hypertension for years. When she was giving, she had an emergency C-section with our first son, and she lost a lot of blood. And the doctor came and pulled me aside and he said, "Steve, it got really hairy in there." And when she woke up, a friend, I was coaching high school football at the time, and my head coach's wife, who I just went out with, he and his wife for dinner last week. She went with Elizabeth and I went with Matthew. And when Elizabeth woke up, the first thing she said to Tracy was, "I'm not supposed to be here."
Wow.
And something was planted, and it took us years to kind of unpack what was going on spiritually, the kind of attack that was going on. So there was something in my spirit that always knew that this could be my journey, losing my wife, becoming a widower. And really the thought really became I knew this was going to be my journey when 5.5 years ago, actually almost 6 years ago now, my wife was hospitalized with a significantly enlarged heart, and a heart that was failing congestively. Mm-hmm. Undiagnosed pulmonary hypertension, which we believe kind of went back to that very first birth with Matthew. She complained about chest pains starting the next night. And the doctors always said, "Oh, that's just the lupus, that's just the lupus, that's just the lupus." Well, the doctors, when she went in November of 2014, said that this is an end of life kind of situation. And once she was formally diagnosed with the pulmonary hypertension, Dr. Badish, who is a world-renowned doctor, pulled me aside. He said, "Steve, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but there's a very real possibility your wife won't be around to see your youngest graduate high school." Mm. It took me a while to kind of absorb that, soak that in. And once I recovered from that shock, I wrote about it on Facebook 2 days after she died. I made the determination that I was going to try and live every single day with no regrets. That way, if for some reason she was suddenly gone, I would be able to look back at however many months, years I was given. I would be able to look back and say, "Hey, I've got no regrets. I loved her to the best of my ability." And so anyway, at the beginning of COVID, I was in Wisconsin for the boys basketball tournament. one of my college roommates was the number 1 seed in all of Division 5,
Oh, wow.
undefeated, 2 career 1,000-point scorers. One of the players is a offensive line recruit for the University of Wisconsin.
Nice.
And if you know anything about college football, UW is an offensive line machine. They churn out guys into the NFL like crazy. And
those
Ben
boys.
Barton's a really good prospect, and his son Chandler was first team all conference, and this was a team he was going to win state. I mean, he told me about that. He told me that 10 years prior. So I was super excited. I got out to Wisconsin the first day I got out there. They made the first that round of sectionals only family, and then the next night, actually that night, they canceled the entire tournament. And so the next day, Elizabeth called and she said, I'm not feeling well. I think it might be COVID. But she said a friend who husband worked for the DOD, her husband and Marissa were kind of not feeling well either. And so I immediately got a plane ticket back the next day rather than fiddle around with trying to work things out with Frontier. I just got a one-way ticket from Southwest and just came back.
Yeah.
And so anyway, she got tested that Monday, mid-March, and when she got that negative test back, she was just up and down for about 7 weeks total, and her doctor wouldn't see her because they thought it still could be COVID. There was a high false negative rate, and so because both of us were exhibiting some symptoms, they thought we might have it. And unfortunately, those virtual visits that we were relegated to, some pneumonia set in. And on April 29th, she was hospitalized. She woke up at 4:30 in the morning throwing up, wasn't able to keep even a sip of water down. And we knew at that point she had to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
So we called the ambulance. They came, picked her up, and said goodbye through the front door and said, hopefully I'll see you soon. Hopefully, I expected them to let us in because, I mean, this is April 29th. So we're looking at about 7 weeks into the COVID thing. I figured, it's especially Colorado. I mean, we didn't get hit like New York or New Jersey or any of those other,
or even
Seattle,
like Texas,
any of those
where
hot
we're at.
spots.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I figured, it's not going to be a problem. I'll get a COVID test and I'll be negative. And I was that day. I got a COVID test. Elizabeth got a COVID test again, was negative. And I was told, no, you can't come to the hospital. I figured, okay, all right. I started calling some friends, and one of them leads a pretty significant ministry here in town, John Stonestreet, the president of Colson Center for Christian Worldview.
Okay.
And John's a client and a really good friend. And John said, hey, Steve, I just got off the phone. I know about your situation. I've been watching it. This is just a couple days in. And he said, I've got a donor that was very involved in this hospital merger here in Colorado Springs. And he gave me some really good advice for you to try and work your way up the chain, to get up to the top of the chain right away. Said to call the hospital CEO and to call the head of nursing and basically plead your case and get an exception. He said that should be able to get it done. They wouldn't take my call at all. And so Christopher Gessner, the CEO of University of Colorado Anschutz, Elizabeth Concordia, the CEO of University of Colorado Health, and the head of nursing, their offices refused to take my call. And they said, their office basically said, you have to talk to either the head nurse on that floor, or you need to talk to a patient advocate. So I called and left a message with a patient advocate. I figured they were probably overrun with requests for people to come in. And so when I got a hold of the head nurse on the floor, I said, hey, I just got my COVID test back yesterday. I'm negative. Can I see my wife? No. I have personal protective equipment that's provided by insurance because I have to change her Hickman line that goes into her chest that's pumping in meds 24/7. No. I've decreased the infection risk by more than 66%. Most PH patients that have a Hickman line going in, they get an infection because there's an open hole right here in your chest with a line that's going in. They get one infection a year. Elizabeth had 2 infections. This was her second infection in 5.5 years. And still a no. And so a couple of days later, I got a call back from the patient advocate, and really that person was nothing more than an advocate for the hospital, and put a real sour taste in my mouth. And so at that point, I had a friend who works in PR. He used to be the VP of PR at Focus on the Family, for those that don't know.
Yeah.
And anyway, he sent a blast out to, I think it was like 800 reporters, and I got a bunch of local bites and some bites up in Denver. So we started doing stories, and I was trying to get in whatever way I possibly could to work through the channels. And on Friday before Mother's Day, so 2 days before Mother's Day, I went up to Denver to go pick up my mom from the airport. I was really focusing hard on trying to get into that hospital and trying to force the hospitals to start to let screened visitors in. Right. You know, I was willing to go by whatever restrictions they wanted to place on me.
Right.
I was willing to be quarantined to my wife's room, and if I left without an escort, boom, I'm booted. I was willing to wear a mask every second that I was there at the hospital. If I was ever caught without a mask, boom, I'd be willing to leave. I was willing to buy my own friggin' hazmat suits.
Yeah.
And I told them that. I said, I'll buy whatever it is that you want. I'll drop $5,000 if needed. Let me get in there to see my wife. Because when she was in November 2014, the doctors called it, like I said, an end of life kind of situation. And she was much sicker in 2014 than she was when she went in. It was serious. Pneumonia was serious. I will fully say that. It was serious. But it wasn't critical. It wasn't life-threatening. And it got to be life-threatening at one point. So going back to that Friday, we're going up to go pick up my mom. I thought, hey, we've got a little bit. If we leave a little early, we can pick up some gyros at a gyro place, just a couple miles from the hospital, and go sit in the parking lot outside of her window and FaceTime with her, eat dinner together, and then we'll flash the lights. We'll wave from the car, and they can flash the lights to her room, and she can wave from the window. And so at the end, her nurse got her up, walked her to the window. They flashed the lights. We waved, and she got super emotional. I mean, just started crying nonstop. And anytime she ever got emotional like that, with that kind of deep emotion, she went down physically. And that night, I got a call at 2:30 and 5 in the morning saying your wife is bleeding in one of her lungs. We're moving her to ICU. We're trying to stop it. The second call was, we've slowed it down. We don't think it's a major artery. We think it's a couple smaller ones. We've given her a coagulant because she's on blood thinners. And so she's in ICU. Don't come up. So at this point, I didn't crash quite yet. I was strong. For her on Saturday, she was super weak. And in fact, there were a few times that we talked that I'd never seen her that weak. And when I hung up on FaceTime, I wondered if that was the last time I was going to talk to my wife. And so anyway, Mother's Day comes, and I pull out all my tricks to try and get her to smile, and I can't get her to smile, not once. And at that point, I crashed emotionally. I went into this just depression because I was like, I'm stuck. I can't get to see my wife. She's in ICU. Nothing I'm doing. They're not allowing me in. And so anyway, she slowly got better. I slowly started to kind of come out of that funk. And so she improved, where a week and a half after she went into ICU, actually I think it was 8 days, 9 days, she was moved out of ICU back into the step down ICU. And then like the next day they were starting to talk about letting her come home. Cool. All right. So on Tuesday, May 19th, 2020, we had a call at about 4:00 in the afternoon. It was about 10 minutes where we talked about kind of the details of when she could come home. I was kind of starting to plan out meals. I was starting to plan out, hey, this day, first day, this friend's going to come over. Second day, this friend's going to come over. Third day, your mom's going to come down. Just kind of starting to plan out some schedules so that way she get all that. Not try and overwhelm her, but try and stagger out her friends coming over so that way she'd get what she should have gotten during that time that she was in the hospital. Because in 2014, between her mom and me, we were there 24/7. I would go for like 3 days, and then her mom would come and stay like 1 or 2. I'd come home. My mom was with the boys. She flew in from Wisconsin in 2014. And so that way I'd be able to kind of focus. And it was that kind of personal attention that I believe really, really helped pull my wife out of where she was in November of 2014 from being in that critical place. And so, we had a really, really, probably the first really good conversation where both of us were in a really good place. And 40 minutes later, I got a call from the hospital. And when I looked at it, I thought, hey, cool, they're giving me details about picking her up tomorrow. And instead they said, your wife's gone into cardiac arrest. Get up here now. Took me an hour and a half to get up to that hospital. I called about 20 minutes into the drive. They said they were still doing compressions. I knew I wasn't going to see her alive at that point. And then about an hour into the drive, once I got to the very south part of Denver, I called again. And that's when her doctor, Dr. Bull, told me we couldn't save her. And so when I got to the hospital, I wasn't wearing a mask. I never thought about bringing a mask. Obviously, I mean, you're not thinking about a whole lot of things, just trying to get up to the hospital as quick as possible. And they never offered me a mask, never told me to put one on, which, I mean, that's fine. When I was on my way out after saying goodbye to her body, more than half the doctors, nurses, and staff on that ground floor were not wearing masks. If this was really, really, really that dangerous, and I believe that it's highly contagious. I believe that, there is an at-risk population that needs to be very careful when it comes to this virus. But that hospital had the highest number of COVID patients in the entire state of Colorado. And that was the reason that I was told I was never allowed in. Why was not every single doctor, nurse, staff person, janitor, freaking janitors that weren't wearing masks?
Man,
So anyway, it didn't really hit me until the next day. If it would have, I would have pulled out my phone and started recording it and live streamed it. And but obviously, I mean, that kind of a trauma, you're just not thinking clearly, not thinking straight. And so, over the next coming weeks, I just kept hearing story after story after story after story of people that were giving birth alone. No spouse, no loved one, no mom allowed to be with the wife, the mom, the pregnant woman. I heard stories of kids being in the ER alone. I saw one story on Twitter of an 8-year-old boy who was in the ER. Mom wasn't allowed to be with him, and they wouldn't even let the kid have his freaking teddy bear. what kinds of trauma is that kid going to have? And these kids, what kinds of traumas are they going to have about doctors and medical professionals? And how fearful are they of going to a doctor, of going to a hospital for the rest of their lives, unless if they get this dealt with? And of course, I mean, we're still seeing nursing homes, hospices that are not allowing visitors.
Right.
It's tragic. We did a great job of fighting a virus, but we left all these individuals in the wake.
Mm-hmm.
I was telling you guys before we started, I believe that my wife, I think I was telling someone else earlier today that my wife was collateral damage in this, because it was some undiagnosed pneumonia that you can't diagnose pneumonia over a virtual visit.
Yeah.
And she was relegated to these virtual visits that she wasn't given the kind of proper care that she needed.
Yeah.
And we're just now starting to see what's coming down in terms of numbers, in terms of, the number of people that have suffered as collateral damage because of the way in which we shut down and the way in which we were caught. Not really we, but the health care industry was caught with his pants down.
Yeah.
They told us they had plans for a pandemic, but yet it's clear that they didn't think about this one angle, this one aspect of the individual. The individual.
Well, so pneumonia is what you said she was diagnosed with, and they did that over like teledoc or over a Zoom.
Yeah, so her doctor wouldn't see her in person, and she was. We had a pulse ox meter at our house, and so she was watching all blood pressure and heart rate and pulse ox and those kinds of things that you need to be watching for COVID.
Oh, so they were thinking it was COVID, but it was the pneumonia. It was actually pneumonia. So they wouldn't see her because they thought it was COVID.
It was a bacterial pneumonia is what she was ultimately hospitalized with.
Got it.
And then also a blood infection too.
Well, sure.
And so, it's.
Well, that is a heartbreaking story. I mean, it definitely hits home for me. I keep hearing you describe something that I've lived.
Tell a little bit about
to a degree.
Yeah.
My wife she has autoimmune disease too. It's Addison's, as well as a whole bunch of other things, thyroid, premature ovarian failure. We are in and out of the hospitals pretty regularly historically. I got to say, I'm pretty blessed at this point that with COVID, she hasn't been in. There have been some close calls where, BP was super low at night, and it was like, we should probably bring you in the ER, but also, I hear something like that, and it's just, it's horrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things where people are in situations where they should go to the hospital, but they're not.
Yeah.
Right.
Because they're so afraid of being alone.
Right.
Ethan Nicole on the Babylon Bee podcast told me when he was a kid that he had to spend nights in a hospital after some kind of procedure alone, and it freaked him out. Mm-hmm. I've got a friend of my sister-in-law who's a nurse. She had a procedure and needed to be in the hospital a few days. And she told me, I work with these people, and I was gripped with loneliness because I couldn't be with my family, because my family couldn't be there. How much more for people that don't know anyone at the hospital? I mean, I'll give Elizabeth credit. She made the best of the situation. I mean, she really tried to minister to the doctors and nurses and made the best situation she could out of it. And she told me a couple times, Steve, I don't know what God's doing. Keep fighting, but don't worry about me. I'm actually doing halfway okay. I'm making the best of this. And yes, I totally wish you were here. And yes, I wish my mom was able to be here. And but there are lots of people that aren't equipped with the kinds of tools that Elizabeth learned over the years to really, kind of be the person that she was, and not let her sicknesses become her identity, and not let, looking at things from a way that could be a positive. Yeah. And so I can't imagine what those people, I couldn't imagine.
I can't imagine. How long was she in the hospital without seeing the family?
21 days.
21. I can't even imagine that. I mean, there's something that's broken when doctors are afraid of sick people in hospitals. You have to go in and be alone.
Yeah,
that's not the way that we're going to heal.
Yeah, and wasn't there something in particular about like the head of the infectious disease department at that hospital was, if I remember parts of the story that I've heard, was actually lobbying for you to stop going to the press because.
And I wouldn't say lobbying for me to stop going to the press. Okay. She knew. So the story is she inserted herself into my wife's case pretty early, right around the time that first article was published. Okay. And I was starting to make a public stink. And like the next day, she came into my wife's office, my wife's room, and said, "Oh, Elizabeth Reiter, does your husband happen to be Steve? Oh, his name is on my desk." I completely felt like it was just manipulative to try and she was playing the good cop to my wife to try and get me to to back off.
But I mean, there's a righteous fury that is, I mean, it needs to be answered. Like that is what what both had to deal with is, you can't even put it into words. Like that is insane.
So I've got a couple of questions about like the first. Thanks for sharing that. I can't imagine that, especially with the work that you're doing now, as great as the cause is, that having to relive that in order to talk about what's happening with the Never Alone project, that can't be easy, especially since it's just still a few months old.
No, it's not. It's really not. And in fact, I've taken breaks from Never Alone just for the simple reason that it's just ripping that Band-Aid off, actually ripping the scab off, and I need to take some time and kind of heal from it a little bit, and then now I've got some energy, I can focus back on it. And no, I completely agree.
Well, again, thanks for sharing that with us, because it's exhausting to hear. I can't imagine what it was like to have lived it. So as a pastor, we've seen some of those same things when it comes to hospital visits. We've had several people that we've not been able to get to, people in nursing homes that I've got a couple of members of our congregation, we're right around like 150. And I've got several members of our elder care team that are going and like forcing their way through hedge bushes so that they can like put their hand on the window of a room that somebody's at. Yeah. Because we're not allowed in. We've been stonewalled in a lot of those situations. And as I was talking with some of our leadership team, we were talking to the people in the church, hey, we're going to do this interview. This is an important topic. We're trying to figure out what we can do on our end. And I'll ask you some questions about that in a few minutes. But several of the men in our church and the three of us in particular, as we were talking about it, is so as a husband and as a father, the instinct seems to be like, I'm gonna walk in and I'm gonna knock over everybody that's in the way, and get to my wife. So how do you, in that situation, how did you keep your emotions and your actions in check to be able to handle this responsibly, even though you're in such a difficult situation?
I knew it would be more about me if I went in there and I got myself thrown in jail, which is really ultimately what happened. It would have been more about me than about my wife. And so instead, I just focused and channeled that energy into trying to get reporters to bite. If there was a nibble, and I heard back from any reporter, I was dripping, sending them email, sending them a text, checking in, letting them know that this was still a problem, forwarding them other articles and saying, listen, this is a bigger problem than just me. This is one story. There's a lot more people in the state. If you dig, you could win a friggin' Pulitzer Prize probably out of this.
Yeah.
And so, so that's how I did it, as I focused and channeled my energy into something that was productive.
Yeah, there was a story that came out today that said that there were a bunch of protesters in Colorado. I don't know if you saw this, at a retirement home.
Yep, Greeley.
Yeah,
Greeley.
I've got a good friend of ours, Ron Waterman, lives in Greeley, Colorado. A guy we used to do some ministry work with. That the people in the retirement home were protesting that they would rather die of loneliness than of COVID. And you had mentioned something before.
COVID.
Yeah.
The other one, loneliness, right? But you had mentioned something that the AARP had put out a study about what a day alone or what loneliness was equivalent to, and can you elaborate on that and kind of what that looks like?
Yeah. So AARP, I forget the doctor's name that did this study, but they basically looked at mortality rates of loneliness and tried to equate it to how many cigarettes per day is equal to loneliness. And they said loneliness is equal to smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Yeah.
And if that's indeed the case, 21 days times 15, it's 315 cigarettes is what my wife smoked of loneliness. And she made the best, like I said, she made the best of it. She did. But looking at the autopsy results, she saw a significant decline in terms of her heart, her lungs. They found kidney stones. She complained of back pain the last week of her life. The last week of her life, she complained about back pain. And had we been allowed in, we would have been able to massage her lower back. Her mom's a massage therapist, so her mom really would have been able to do a better job than me. But I mean, it's just rubbing her back. And if the pain wouldn't have gone away, we would have said something to the doctors and the nurses of, hey, this back pain isn't going away. What could this be? She had kidney stones.
And you talk about, being there with a patient, not just the physical interaction there, but also being an advocate. I mean,
totally
with the children, especially the story you told about the 8-year-old. Like, how much does he know about what he's allergic to?
Never mind that. He doesn't legally have a voice.
Right.
Period. Yeah. He doesn't legally have a voice. He's not 18, 21, whatever it is.
And so, like with your wife, if the doctor's coming in, he's seen how many other patients and he's exhausted by the time he gets to her. If she's asleep, how much attention, versus having somebody in there that's like, no, she's been complaining of back pain. Right. She's had these other things going on.
And also with autoimmune, there's like a list of things you have to tell the doctor when you arrive. And there's some things you have to make them do that they may not want to do. But I agree. I mean, if you don't have a family member in your corner,
and you feel like crap because you're dealing with it, yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I mean, I heard I had a doctor she's a pathologist in the Tampa St. Pete area. And she called me up and she said she was moved by my story. I believe it was the Babylon Bee interview that she called me from, or it might have been the Federalist article. I don't remember which. And she called me up and we had this amazing conversation. And she said, Steve, you need to fight for legislation for the simple reason that the doctors in general really like that there is no family member there because they're getting the rounds done much quicker. much quicker because because those family members are not asking the questions and the doctor's not having to answer those questions. And then, if everything that comes with, a question that needs to be answered and, new procedure, new this, new that, new whatever that has to be written up and done. And the nurses are also getting their rounds done even quicker without those family members there. And so she told me, she said, Steve, there needs to be legislation for the simple reason that it's not just going to be a pandemic that the hospitals are going to restrict those visitations.
Yeah.
They'll do it the next flu season.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now that the precedent's been set.
Yeah, so tell us about the Never Alone project.
Right.
You mentioned legislation. Where are you lobbying?
So here in Colorado, I want to say it was a couple weeks after Elizabeth died. I got a call from my former state rep, Amy Stevens, who used to be a colleague of mine at Focus. And Amy said, I have a mutual friend. I have a friend who's in the hospital. He wants to get out. They're not letting him out. He's lonely. I heard about your story. I'm deeply moved. Tim Geithner, your current rep, can I introduce you to him to try and get some legislation written for the state of Colorado to open up the hospitals? I said, absolutely. So I went up to the Capitol and met with Tim, and we had an amazing conversation. The guy's just freaking incredible. I mean, if he wanted to run for a higher office, he said he's never going to run for Congress, but I said, but if he wanted to, he could be an excellent congressman. Tim, and it's mainly just because he doesn't want to be away from his kids,
right?
For half the year, for more than half the year, which is what these guys are often doing when they're in Congress. Between fundraising and actual legislation, that they're gone more than half the year. And so anyway, Tim was deeply moved and shed a bunch of tears over the story. And anyway, we got he worked with the Hospital Association to get some legislation drafted. And before it even hit committee, there was a strike through that basically gutted the bill from a requirement to a suggestion. And Tim and I talked about whether to get it pulled or to just push it through as is. And we decided to push it through as is because even if it's just a symbolic victory, maybe some press outlets would take it and run with it. And that would really ultimately put some bad press on the hospitals like University of Colorado Hospital Anschutz that still hadn't opened up. And sure enough, as soon as it passed the Senate before it even hit the governor's desk, they quietly opened up and started letting visitors in. And that's where my wife was at the University of Colorado Hospital Anschutz campus in Aurora, Colorado, which is the southeast side of Denver. Really, the hospital's pretty much straight east of Denver almost. And so it was a symbolic victory. I just had cigars with Tim and his wife, with a few other guys from Holy Smokes on Sunday, and Tim said that they're going to try and reintroduce the bill to get it actually have some teeth, so that way these future protections are here. So that way patients can have the right to at least one screened visitor per patient per day, no time limits. And really, ultimately, that's going to come down to the hospitals making sure that they have the PPE in place, that they have really thought through how to safely let healthy people in.
And this will show up. So, I mean, I'm serious. Like, that's not a joke. That's real.
Yeah. And the janitorial crew.
Yeah, the janitorial crew can show up. I mean, they know how to do that.
I know. And like one of the things that I publicly questioned the hospitals were, okay, are when your doctors are not working, are they going to the gas station? Are they going to King Soopers or a grocery store? Are they going to Walmart or Target or Home Depot or Costco?
Right.
Are they wearing masks every single time that they're out? Are they scrubbing? Are they washing their hands? Are they doing all this stuff? Are their family members? Are they doing all of that?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Chances are probably not. Chances are before the mask mandate that the governor put forth here in Colorado, I doubt it. I really, really doubt it. And so really, I mean, there are ways to really balance the individual's needs versus protecting the collective. And it was all about the collective, and the individual was left to rot on the vine.
Mm-hmm.
And that ultimately, I really believe down the road, we are going to look back at this in horror at the number of people that died alone, at the number of people that suffered alone, and how much malpractice happened because the nurses weren't taking good enough care. I mean, my wife is the perfect example. She had kidney stones, and they didn't listen to her about her lower back pain.
Dang. I'm just sort of at a loss.
Yeah.
Well, how can we follow the Never Alone project? How can the listeners, should they feel compelled to follow or donate or whatever? How would we do that?
Yeah. So we have a website, neveralonepandemic.org. And then a Facebook page, facebook.com/neveralonepandemic. There we also have a Facebook group where people can kind of share what's going on. And it's a place really to kind of network. Through this, I got to know an aide for a state senator in North Carolina. They introduced a very similar bill, and just like in Colorado, the hospital association went in and gutted it. The hospital lobby is a very powerful organization, and ultimately, really what it's going to take in order to get legislation passed is for all of us to share stories, to get on the same page, share hashtags, so that way we can start to generate some traction and some movement, so that way the media takes notice, because it's going to take publicly shaming the hospitals, publicly shaming them, for them to budge on this issue.
Shaming and simply requiring accountability.
Well, that's what it takes right now, it seems like.
Yeah.
So what kind of hashtags should we be using or can we share?
Right.
Not just so that we can get, the stories of those people out there, but also so that we can support other people who have been through similar situations.
Yeah. So I've created some hashtags: never sick alone, never die alone, never ER alone, never birth alone, never give birth alone, never alone project, never alone. Those are the kinds of ones. If you go to the Facebook page, facebook.com/neveralonepandemic, there you'll see the hashtags that I just copy and paste into the posts, and take whichever one works for you or all of them, and post it and tag Never Alone Project. And this is what it's going to take in order for this to actually happen, are for people that have had these stories to share them publicly, and many times they're painful. I joined a Facebook group called Young and Widowed with Children. One of my former employees at Family Talk, she was an intern, and there was another intern, and they fell in love and they got married. And so I had two editors that ended up getting married, and Mike sadly passed away 3 years ago from a pulmonary embolism, just like my wife passed away from. And so Molly sent me this group called Young and Widowed with Children on Facebook. And I shared a story, an article from the Colorado Sun, which really kind of detailed my story, that was released 2 days after my wife passed. And I kid you not, guys, within 24 hours, there were at least 12.5 people, young, that lost their mostly husbands. Most of them were wives who lost their husband during the pandemic. None from COVID. There were a couple that were like drug overdoses and a couple that were like heart attacks. And all of them had the same story where they never got to say goodbye to their spouse. They never got to be there with them. It was they'd taken them to the ER and then being turned away. And then getting a call that their spouse was gone. And we need to do better. We need to do better. And for anyone that's listening and is like and is questioning, how dare I put other doctors and nurses and other patients at risk by demanding that guest visitors be let in? I would say that, I understand that. But if we set a goal of this, inevitably throughout human history, entrepreneurs have stepped up and come to the plate with breakthroughs in personal protective equipment.
Right. Yeah.
And if we set the bar, if we set the bar of one screened visitor per patient per day, rather than saying it just can't be done, what if we say, okay, this is the goal. How do we get this goal safely? And then all these hospitals start working together and trying to share research about what kind of mask can we create, and then 3D print right on the spot. So that way they scan, we pay, $50, whatever, to get our mask to get in there. They screw on the canisters and then we can go in there and we're not transmitting and we're not receiving that respiratory virus, which is the number one thing that all pandemic experts that I have seen in my entire life, their number one concern has always been respiratory viruses.
Yeah.
It's always Ebola wasn't nearly as scary because it's difficult to transmit. But I mean, once you get it, that is really scary. But respiratory flus and viruses and coronaviruses have always been the ones that have been the greatest concern. I mean, we all remember SARS. It was a respiratory virus. We all remember swine flu. We all remember Hong Kong. We're too young to remember Hong Kong flu, but Hong Kong flu was before I was born. I think I'm older than all you guys, and so so the Spanish flu was a respiratory virus. And so if we can figure out a way to create some personal protective equipment that genuinely protects and drops that risk to a point where, okay, you're not showing signs, you don't have a fever, you're not coughing, you look good. Okay, here's the mask. You're free to go in.
Right. Yeah.
If we set that goal, inevitably the free market will step in and entrepreneurs will see a money-making opportunity and they will step up to the plate. So that way the next pandemic, we won't have a problem.
I definitely agree. The one thing that we can't do is let our family members be put into a sick room and, if they get better, great. If not, that's unacceptable. I think we do need to change the conversation from, changes the conversation to how do we do it? How do we safely bring in?
Yeah. Gentlemen, on Mother's Day, because I couldn't get my wife to smile at all, our conversation actually that night turned to, what if this is the one you don't come home from? That is not a conversation anyone should have over FaceTime. It's not. That is a conversation to have in person while you're holding your loved one's hand and you're having those very real conversations. It's wrong. My son, the night when I came home, and I told my boys that my wife had passed, that their mother had passed away, and they weren't able to bring her back. 20 minutes after I told them, Caleb immediately ran out of the house. He's a mover and he's got ADD. I mean, he's always moving, always doing something. He's a lot like me in that way. Matthew just sat there on the couch. And after about 20 minutes, I put my arm around him and I said, "Hey, bud, what's going on in there?" And I tapped his heart. And he said, "Daddy, I'm equal parts sad, equal parts pissed because the last 3 weeks of my mama's life were stolen from me."
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's exactly what happened. This time with our loved ones was stolen from us because the hospitals, because the United States sick care system, I don't like to call it a healthcare system because it's really a sick care system. They got caught with their pants down and they didn't think about this one angle. And if they did, they clearly came up with, they clearly had the wrong ideas, because individuals need physical touch. They need other people. They need someone to speak life. They need someone to rub their back and to rub their feet and to cry with them and to hold them and to pray with them and to just talk and to laugh and to try and bring levity and just try and do the things that we try and do with our loved ones in the hospital to try and help them to get better.
Yeah. I want to take a quick beat because I want to make a separation here in case there's some things that you don't want us to air. But just as a fellow believer and somebody who, even though we've known each other now for about maybe an hour, I kind of feel close because I've heard this story. How are your sons? How are you handling that? And like I said, this is something you don't want us to air.
Yeah.
We respect that and keep it off. So. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Really, we're doing better than I would have expected. The day after I announced, a friend of mine that lost his wife, that lives in Oregon, he called me and he said, or he sent me a message. He said, "Hey, if you don't have my number, here it is. Call me anytime." And the next day I did call him. And at the end of our conversation, he said, "Steve, can I give you a piece of advice?" I said, "Absolutely." So do whatever you can to get your kids into grief counseling. He said, "In my grief group, I saw a vast difference between the kids that got counseling and the kids that didn't. And the kids that didn't often had more alcohol, more drug abuse, more anger issues, more acting out, more all of that kind of stuff than the kids that got the counseling." And he said, "If you need to put it on a credit card, put it on a credit card. Do whatever you can." Fortunately, we had some life insurance, not a lot, but it was enough to pay off the house. Mm-hmm. And then also a friend of mine created a GoFundMe, and we got $30,000 out of that. And so I set aside a chunk of that money, that GoFundMe money, for the boys, for the counseling for the boys and I. Mm-hmm. And Matthews said that's helped quite a bit. And it helped me quite a bit too. Like anything, I mean, it comes in hits and waves, where the waves just seem to be less and less. Occasionally it'll get hit with a bigger wave, but just like the ocean, I mean, when it starts to calm down, the waves get less and less. And I'm doing better than I would have expected. This week and week has been a little tougher than most, because on Saturday I finally got the courage to clean out her closet, and I pulled some clothes that I wanted to keep and put them in a bag, and some shoes and some stuff that, a stuffed animal for the boys. That was one of Elizabeth's when she was growing up. I did great on Saturday, and then Sunday, seeing all 13 of those bags, it just hit me. And again, yesterday and today, just kind of seeing those bags just kind of around the house has just kind of been a downer and a bummer, and kind of put me in a little bit of a funk. Yeah. But I've told her friends, I've said, "Hey, if you want anything, come over this week, and I'll let you go through everything, and you can take whatever you want." We've kind of kept what we want. Her mom's pulled out what she wanted. And so, come Saturday or Sunday or Monday next week, I'm going to take all those bags and take them to St. Vinny's or wherever. And just kind of that next step in moving forward.
Well, again, thanks for sharing that with us. That's, I mean, I don't know that I would be able to share that. That's
unfathomable. But while we have you, I would like to ask about the Holy Smokes.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you guys for bringing a smile to my face now.
Transition just a bit.
Yeah. Let's shift gears.
So first off, you're the podcast host, right?
Yes.
For
Yep.
Holy Smokes. How often do you guys release episodes? What does it typically cover?
So, Holy Smokes podcast.
I did listen to it for the record, but for those who haven't heard it.
Yeah. So, with Holy Smokes, after my wife passed away, I took a little bit of a break. But when I first launched, I was doing twice a week, and then I scaled it back to once a week. And then after my wife passed away, I took a break because I just really wasn't mentally in a place where I could. And then I want to say it was about a month and a half ago, maybe, I started releasing again. And so what we do is we Holy Smokes is a private cigar club. It doesn't cost any money to be involved. And it really, you can listen to the podcasts, the first, I think, number 1 and number 2 that really kind of tell the story of Holy Smokes and tell Kay's story. But back in 2007, a guy locally named Kei Hidamine, a big Japanese dude who I love him. Oh my gosh, I love him so much.
Sounds like a cigar smoker.
Yeah,
He's got a cigar smoker.
He's Kay is the man. Anyway, he sent a text out to more than a half dozen ministry leaders and mega church pastors in the Colorado Springs area, and every single one showed up. And at the end of the night, all of them said, "I need more of this in my life." And so they came up with the name Holy Smokes to abbreviate it HS time, so that way their secretaries would see HS time and might think it was Holy Spirit time. And so that in case their staff wasn't happy about. Yeah. And so anyway, so it kind of became a semi-regular thing. And then I want to say it was around 2010 that Paul Felitas started just having guys meet in his backyard every Wednesday, and occasionally just be a few. And then, a few became more. And when they became more regular, it started to become more and more. I met Kay in September of, was it 2014, September 2014. So 6 years ago now. And the first question Kay asked me was, "Hey, you like an occasional cigar?" And I said, "Yes, I haven't had anyone to smoke with." And he said, "I've got lots of people you can smoke with." And so that Wednesday, I went to Holy Smokes and saw a few people that I knew from around town. And so it immediately gave me a place, kind of a place to connect. Here in Colorado Springs, we meet every Wednesday from 4:30 till at least 7, sometimes 8, sometimes later. And we have a private, actually it's a secret Facebook group. So it's private and unlisted. And so that way it protects the identity of people that are in the group. So that way,
because it's a sin to smoke cigars. You don't want anyone to find out.
Yeah, we have Southern Baptists, pastors and ministers and leaders that are very careful. Some with bigger names that are very careful, and so they love Holy Smokes. Mm-hmm. And they are active within the community, but they don't want their name public. In fact, I've got one who I went up to his place on Saturday and had a cigar, and he told me, "I'm getting ready to retire. I think it's next. I think either the end of this year or early next year, he's actually going to be formally retiring from the Southern Baptists Convention as a speaker, and with his organization. And so he's going to be freed up to be able to come out publicly about his love of cigars and trying to, I want to get more of those leaders within denominations. I don't want to say leaders within the big pastors, big names within denominations that are not fine tobacco friendly and not, don't like the message, and they think it's wrong of faith, friendship, fine tobacco, and drink. which is really kind of the tagline that I have for Holy Smokes.
They sound lame. No, so yeah, my one of my friends told me about this several years ago. We went to lunch. I don't know how it came up, but he's a fellow Christian, and he had mentioned something about a Bible study, and I said, I think I'd like to find a Bible study, and he mentioned, we meet up and we smoke cigars, and I was like, wait, what? Those things. Those things go together.
Bible study,
but yeah, that's an awesome idea.
Yeah. So anyway, we have I want to say it's about 3,700 members now in the secret Facebook group, in markets all around the world. I mean, we've got some guys in Kigali, Rwanda. We've got a couple of guys in Okinawa. We've got some guys in Europe and Israel and Australia and Africa and Asia
and Malta, right? On one of the episodes.
Yep.
He was in Malta and posted something to Facebook, and before he knew it, there was a group of guys.
Yeah, that's bad to the bone.
Cool. Yeah,
that's bad.
Yeah. And that's one of my favorite stories is I remember last summer, someone was, I think it was Iron Man, was in Rome, and he said, hey, I'm in Rome for a few days. Anyone want to get together and have a cigar outside the Colosseum? And sure enough, 2 days later, I saw a picture of him with someone in Rome outside of the Colosseum with a cigar in their hands. And that's beautiful. And so really the podcast is all about telling the stories of the people of Holy Smoke. So that way, when they go to Dallas, when they come to Colorado Springs, when they go to Denver, when they go to Seattle or Orlando or Charlotte, North Carolina, when they go to those markets, they'll already know someone because we featured their story on the podcast. And or when you go to Southern California and you want to go to Culebra Cigar Company, which is where Ethan, Kyle, and Dan from the Babylon Bee love to hang out, you can say, Ethan, I heard you on the Holy Smokes podcast.
Right.
And I love your stuff for the Bee. You are rock.
I love Axe Cup. Yeah. I found out about Axe Cup after learning that he was working with the Bee, and it is absolutely hysterical. My boys and I watched Axe Cop on Hulu, and it's amazing dad-son time. Yeah, no doubt. I really want to know about the guys in Rwanda because I don't know. Are you a coffee drinker?
A little bit.
Okay, so we are
no.
Okay, not Kyle. Kyle hates coffee.
I would rather drink lake water. I respect people's choices for coffee. I just can't do it. I can't stand it. And unfortunately, I'm even in the same boat with cigars. Now, fine drink.
What a loser.
I can get behind a good old fashioned. There's nothing wrong with that. So.
All right. So which old fashioned was my wife's favorite drink. It was her favorite drink by far. In fact, anytime she would go, she would never smoke cigars because of the pulmonary hypertension and lung issues. Sure. But she would get an old fashioned. She loved old fashions. Now, let me ask you this. You haven't smoked, you don't like cigars, but have you ever tried a pipe?
Ooh. I just saw, and
try it.
Probably, try it. I've never inhaled anything.
No, you don't inhale.
No, sorry. Let me rephrase that. Let me rephrase it. I've never.
Clinton?
I'm more,
Steve's my hero.
I am more.
Just like Bill Clinton, right?
No.
No, I know it. That was George W.
That was George W.
Yeah.
It's just.
No, it was Clinton. It was Clinton.
Clinton?
It was Clinton. I was in college at the time, and all of us in college thought that was the funniest thing in the world. Yeah, right. You smoked weed and you didn't inhale.
Obviously.
Sure you did.
It's just flat. Like for me, I like my dad, my brothers. It's totally fine. It's just not for me, and that's okay.
Really? Okay.
Totally comfortable with it. And I don't have a problem. Like I will sit in the room and everybody else can be smoking a cigar. I don't care.
You'll just sit in the room and not smoke a cigar and drink lake water.
No, I don't want to have you're drinking smoking a cigar. There's something wrong with you. But
we're all made uncomfortable by how comfortable you are not doing the thing we're trying to peer pressure you to do.
I'm not. So, it's okay. It's okay. I will enjoy my drink. That's all right.
Okay, so what are you smoking right now that you're really enjoying?
I just got. Hold on, let me. Are you guys going to use the video of this?
We can. I can cut this part out.
We can.
All right.
Yeah.
No. I mean, if you're going to use it, I'm going to pull it out and I'll show it to you.
Okay, pull
Yes,
it out.
we're going to use
All
it.
right. My Tupper door is right down here.
Oh.
Sweet.
Okay, what's a
So
Tupper door?
That's
What's the difference?
a Tupper door is a big plastic container
Like a Tupperware.
Tupperware.
That's exactly.
But
My mom's
and so this one is, what size is it? It's 74 quarts. So it's a big container.
yes.
And I have a Cigar Oasis humidification device. And so all you do is you put it has like a cartridge at the bottom that you fill with distilled water, and then it automatically keeps it at whatever humidity you want to keep it at. And so I've kept mine right now. I think it's 71% humidity.
Is this something you go out and buy though, like, or is this a homemade thing?
No, you piece it together. So I got the Tupper. I got the plastic container on Amazon.
I would just do this because that's me. Like, I mean, I don't smoke cigars. I would make that. That's just awesome.
It's a business opportunity, Kyle, for you right there. It's a business opportunity. You create these. So this is something that I just got on Cigar Bid. I want to say a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago. It's called Comfortably Numb by Espinosa. So I'm a giant Pink Floyd fan. So my high school art teacher every Friday was Floyd Friday in art class. And we all learned to love Pink Floyd. And so I mentioned this to Tim Long, who used to be involved with Dad Smoking Cigars podcast, and now is with Down to the Nub and Cigar Show Tim. And Tim's a great guy. So he told me about this cigar. It's called Comfortably Numb by Espinosa.
Got a cool wrapper.
Yeah, it does.
And this is just it's a really, really good stick that I've fallen in love with, and I'm likely going to get another box on Cigar Bid once I'm out. I've got 2, 4, 6, 7 sticks left. So
Ignorant.
out of 20.
I have a question. You said how many are left?
Did we
in
get
there?
that on tape?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where he said he was ignorant.
Ignorant means I just don't know yet.
No. That we're just gonna take that.
You know, yeah, that's fine.
No, I'm going to abuse that.
All day long. That's fine. No, but how many did you say you had left?
So I've got 7 left.
And how many would have come in the box?
20.
And
or 25. I think this was 25.
then how much,
20 or 25. One of the two.
how much about with that?
So I think on Cigar Bid, I think this was about between $4 and $5 a stick.
Okay, that's not bad.
No,
That's
okay.
not bad at all.
I thought you were about to say between 400 and 500, and I was like, and that right there is one of the reasons why I can't do this. So I have too many expensive things.
All right.
but
So
okay.
what kind of leaf on the Comfortably Numb? Are
No
we?
idea.
No.
I have no idea.
Brown.
That's something to take a look. It's just,
Yeah.
it's just
Brown.
It's just, yeah. It's a medium bodied stick.
Yeah.
I'm more of a Maduro guy. I love like in my humidor right now. I've got Iroa. They're Maduro. They're full Maduro. So it's a Maduro wrapper, binder, and filler.
Do it.
We
Just no, because like you're talking about this the way I talk and think about like whiskey and scotch.
Yeah.
Like you have my
All right.
now you're
All right.
Any other
I'm in.
Yeah. We'll.
So
So
it's this is a little more medium bodied compared to the Iroa, but it's just this is just so everyone that I've given this Comfortably Numb to has been like, ooh, it's kind of got some nice pepper in it, and it's just got some really good flavor. And
again, I'm speaking from ignorance. I didn't understand that pepper was a part of cigars.
oh man, like cigars have an entire flavor profile.
I get that.
It's not
I
just from like
I know
easy
that.
smoke to dark smoke, but there's pepper, there's
Yeah, but
spices in them.
You have to understand the cigars
flavors. It's
the
incredible.
cigars that I'm used to is my grandfather chewing the thing at the end, and as he's like stapling his hand because it just
Steve's not trying to get you to smoke It's a Boys.
look.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that is or what that means. So we'll just
Why was he stapling his hand?
it was an accident one time.
Oh, okay.
Don't ask
That's not a normal part of the
No.
cigar smoking routine.
No.
Okay, but yeah, there's a whole complexity to it. So you said you
I'm
may
so interested
you may
now.
have to make a trip here to see some of your guys in early.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So I either before the end of the year, I don't think it's going to happen because I've got a trip to Los Angeles the week before Thanksgiving. And
Yeah, can we come hang out with you?
and then what's that?
I said, yeah, can we come hang out with you?
Yeah,
In Los Angeles or
Sure.
just wherever.
Yeah.
It'd be easier when you were here, but if you want to go to Los Angeles, we can convince our wives, hey, we're gonna go hang out with Steve. Who's Steve? Y'all wouldn't get Steve. He's Steve.
Stevesy.
Yeah, do you guys know?
so the plan is, yes, you can come hang out with me in Los Angeles if you wanted to.
Sweet.
But the plan is definitely to come to the Dallas area. With Holy Smokes, we've gotten a couple, because we are a nonprofit. We've gotten some donations in the last year that are just kind of sitting in the bank. And I'm like, I need to go on the road and get some interviews recorded. And so Dallas, we've got a whole bunch of guys that are down there. Some really, really, really good dudes in that area. And it's a really active community. And so that
kind of thing.
What's that?
You take recording studio with you, kind of thing.
Yeah. So what I do have for Holy Smokes is I've got a Zoom H6 right here.
Oh, nice. Cool. We also
and you can see the cigar wrapper that's in here, and you smell my Zoom H6, and it smells like a cigar shop,
Gotcha.
like a cigar lounge. And so, yeah, I'll take this, and then I've got some lapel mics, so that way we're not, that way we're in a nice comfortable chair, relaxed, we're not holding a microphone and trying to drink and smoke at the same time. So I've got some good lapel mics, and I take them on the road, and it's a nice, easy setup. The episode that I was supposed to release this morning that as soon as we're done, I'm going to log in and get it loaded for release right now, was recorded in Seattle a few weeks ago on the back of a 50-foot yacht. And we're talking with Rob Smith, who owns an electric boat building company, and we're talking about the launch of his 16-foot runabout, which is an electric boat. The prototype, we saw the prototype launch and tooling around in it, and we're excited for Rob. And so we're talking about things that are going on with Thane boats, and and talking about the ability to buy some shares of the company at a very early rate, at a very early place. And so
that's amazing. Well, okay, so Steve's got the Holy Smokes podcast, where he's riding around in people's yachts and watching their electric boat prototypes, and his humble brag of how he's got way cooler lives than the rest of us. He's got the Never Alone project, which is neveralonepandemic.org, you said?
Yes, neveralonepandemic.org.
And then facebook.com/neveralonepandemic, so that you can find out more about him. Thank you so much for coming on, man, and sharing your story, and then
thanks, gentlemen, wrapping
up with giving us some good stuff about Holy Smokes. And we'll have to
and the website for Holy Smokes is holysmokes.club. So holysmokes.club for the website for Holy Smokes. There you can learn a little bit more information and get in contact with us that way we can vet you.
Yeah,
I went earlier today and requested to join the club.
Did you have to put on a jacket first before you
like a smoking jacket?
Your webcam just like holysmoke.club, and it just takes a flash. It's like, that guy's out.
That guy's out.
That guy's out.
Well, thanks for coming on and helping peer pressure Kyle.
I'm very excited if I'm honest. So we'll see.
So Kyle, let me know if you have a cigar before I come to Dallas, and if you don't. If you don't, I would be honored to be with you when you have your first cigar.
Okay. Fair enough. That is excellent. I
can go too, right?
No. Yes. Just for that.
I'm going to come under an assumed name so that nobody from the congregation
There you
knows.
go. That
will be good.
Because you're kind of in that.
I pastor a traditional Baptist church.
Incredibly, yes.
Yeah. And most of them love Spurgeon, but they think that he had a deathbed confession that cigars were bad. That's why.
Brother.
Well, hey, man, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
It was great. It was great talking.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Steve Reiter, huh?
Yeah, man. Crazy.
Yeah.
I'm glad the interview ended on a high note,
Yes.
but good grief. That first, 30, 45 minutes?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's
How was
like-
that as difficult for you guys to listen to as it
Yes.
was for me? And especially having heard it the second time, there was part of me that was like, oh, he left out this detail. And then I get something
Right.
new that he said, and I was like,
I think
Ugh.
I mean I think we all probably struggled with words and what do you say to something
It's an
like
inconsolable thing. You can't make it better.
that? Right.
no.
But I mean, he's doing exactly what he has to do is to try to change it for somebody else.
Mhm.
And I cannot imagine, like, I would just be angry. And I'm sure he is. I know he is. But
Yeah,
I mean,
the guy's pretty fired up.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about that.
and like I said, righteously so. Like, there's such a gross, like, I don't even have a word for it. Just of moral misdirection, in the sense that you're somebody believes they're doing the right thing and it's just heinously wrong. Where like when I'm talking about like hospitals and doctors, like,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
like they're trying to, well, in the interest of keeping everybody healthy or whatever. But again, he brought up the point, like, how are they going in and in and out of hospitals and going to Costco, and he names different places, but like, why can't he follow the same procedures? Why can't any person that's needing to go visit somebody in the hospital follow the same procedures that the doctors and the nurses and the janitor staff, like you said, to go visit their loved ones in these rooms?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I mean, it's literally like my wife's worst nightmare.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Going to the hospital for something like that. No one's there to advocate for her. Gosh, I can't talk today.
Well, who's going to expect you to be like super articulate after just
Yeah,
listening to that, right?
Yeah, I was glad we got him laughing at the end.
Yes.
Yeah, that was good.
Because it's got to be painful to bring
Hash
up
over and
all
over.
of that,
Yeah,
all
and-
of the detail.
and that's why I asked him that
And
question.
it's incredibly important to go over all of the
Right.
details. This is what I did. Like, it sounds like he did everything possible, short of, like you said,
storming the
going
castle.
in,
Right.
going in with
But his
guns.
point was accurate.
Figuratively.
Yeah, his point's straight up accurate, but what does that accomplish? All I would do is end up in jail, and then I can't even advocate then. I mean, like, I can't.
Oh yeah, and like if you really do want to get to see your wife, like jail's the best place for you to be.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, but twofold, especially during the pandemic, is because it's spreading so much in the
In
jails from what we're
prisons,
being
yeah.
told.
Yep.
Like he gets put in there, and now there's all kinds of complications. He's an hour and a half away from home. Now he's got the kids to worry about. It's two boys.
Yeah.
I am having listened to it and having gotten to know him a little bit over the course of our interview and a little bit before, like, I'm actually really proud of the way that he handled it. And I think, as difficult as it was, like, it does set a good example and precedent, of what being a good husband and a good father in this time, especially in that situation, looks like, and being like God honoring and family honoring and all of those things. I mean, we all want to say that we would handle it differently, but he was just talking about the ministry that his wife had there.
Right.
It's if you listen to some of the other interviews that he does, she has some really powerful encounters with some nurses and some other healthcare workers. But even in the midst of that, that still is an emotional thing. I mean, I tend to be a fairly emotional guy. Like, I'm not.
Like, you're always crying.
Yeah, I know. I'm such a crier. That's self-censorship right there. But no, I like it. Every time I hear that story, it gets me.
Yeah.
And like I said, the first time I heard it, I was talking to Kirsten about, like, there's this guy, I just heard this incredible story that he has. I really want to interview him for the podcast. And she was like, well, is it the one you were listening to when you were just crying? It's like, yes. She's like, I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
I don't want to know about it.
My wife said the same thing.
Yeah.
Because I had heard, because you had given me the headline,
Right.
of, hey, this is what happened. I went and listened to some of that podcast and got interrupted and started telling my wife about it. She was like, no.
I'm out.
No, I can't.
I will tell you that this, as a pastor, it highlights some holes in my game, maybe some failures that I've had for not. It becomes, and Kyle, you might be able to attest to this a little bit. It becomes really difficult
to your failures.
Yeah. Kyle can definitely attest to my failures.
No.
Thank you, Danley. I think that the thing about going and doing hospital visits and going into those places is, one, like you never know what it's going to mean to somebody, but it's hard to keep a high level of emotional investment whenever you've been doing it for so long.
Sure.
Right. So
like it becomes routine is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right.
So I've been in ministry for 17 years now. So like right from the, when I became adult age, and hospital visits have been a huge part of the last like 7 to 10 years of my ministry. And so going into a hospital, like there are things that you recognize, like, hey, this person's not going to make it.
Right.
Or that there are certain things that happen in a person. You're like, all right, well, here's one that could go either way.
Right.
Is this visit going to make the difference? He's talking a lot about the human interaction. It's difficult sometimes to continue to be emotionally invested in, each room that you go into, especially pre-pandemic. We've got about 40% of our congregation is senior citizens. And so when we walk into a hospital, myself and our deacons or something like that, we might have 4 visits that we have to make. Right. And so we've just had lunch and we go and make the first one and it's, everything's good. Well, at the end of the second hour, when we're going into that fourth hospital room, you're exhausted.
Well, or it's like, we have somewhere to be, and we're only going to spend 5 minutes with this person,
right?
Or we spent an hour and a half with that person, and then 20 minutes, 10 minutes, and now I only got 5 minutes for this last person.
But just being there makes the difference.
Of course,
one of the things I really can't wrap my head around in my position, and I've known you guys for a long time, is that and you guys still see me as me. I still look in the mirror and I'm like, this guy's a doofus. But the people at the church, the people in the community see me as the pastor. And there's something unique about that relationship that I was never able to really appreciate until I've been in this role. And so whenever, like if I were to go visit you at the hospital, it wouldn't mean anything like, my buddy came and saw me at the hospital. The relationship's different.
It's not my pastor, it's my friend here at this point, which is there's just a different relationship.
Certainly, but there is just something really unique about that. Whether I know some of these people, and I've gotten to know we've got some absolutely magnificent people in our congregation, and getting to go and visit them, but others that I don't, have the opportunity to know as well. Just showing up, like how much like the nurses and their families will tell me, hey, you know what? Like the next time a nurse sees me, because we'll go to the same hospitals or we did, they'll be like, hey, after your visit the other day, so and so made a huge turnaround. It was the best day that she's had in the last couple of weeks. Or I'll get text messages from the family members that were like, hey, she ate dinner tonight because she was excited. I'm like, what is that?
It is those little things.
It's crazy, but it's like, what
it's a connection though. Right. It's a connection. So I had a volunteer that had a stroke. Basically, like, I mean, I believe it was starting Sunday morning. He was just off, and this guy, we've known him for a long time. You can't pay the guy to stay home. Like, I mean, he wants to be involved, invested, volunteers weekly, and like I said, I mean, you can't give him a week off. It's, hey, take a break, and he's okay, and then he's upstairs doing something different with another ministry. It's like, now look, that wasn't the point of this. Like, go spend time with your grandchildren or something like that. But he was acting strange, and I don't know, I don't feel well, and all this kind of stuff. And he ended up having a type of stroke that afternoon. And so,
was it like one of the TIA strokes?
No, I
or something
can't
like
even.
that?
I don't even know. No, I mean what it was, but I mean he went into the hospital, and he's one of my key volunteers and people that I keep in contact with weekly, and he disappeared for a week, obviously, because it was, I mean, a huge hole in our ministry that, he's not there. I want to say his name is how's Harvey? What's he doing? And
Yeah.
and it's like, I'm going to the hospital tomorrow. I don't know the answers right now because I'm gonna text him. I mean, I called his wife a couple times and just said, hey, we are checking in, want to make sure that you guys are okay. What can we do for you? Can we get meals set up and all these types of things? And, they're like, no, we're okay. And all this type of stuff. Well, it's like, well, can I come see Harvey? Like, is that possible? And so whenever I went to see him, and yeah, it was not that I did anything,
Right.
but there was a connection. And me and another guy went from the church, and there was a connection that it's like, no, there's true care.
Yeah.
And
you're not just somebody filling a seat or a position,
And again, just taking care of his family and talking with his family too while we're there. It's just, yeah, there's something special about it. There really, really is.
Well, every now and then something comes along that really resonates, I think. And this was one for me. Hearing about Never Alone, and as painful as that story is, I think it's important to listen to that and empathize with him, but also like that should not happen.
Well, no, and champion that cause.
Oh, yeah.
Like that,
there's a plenty of worthy causes, but I can't imagine I'm having a hard time at the moment, off the top of my head, imagining a worthier cause.
Yeah.
Yeah. When he was talking, I had never heard the detail about her having kidney stones.
Right.
And all of the other interviews that I've heard with him, I listened to a couple in preparation for this one. That's the first time I heard that she had kidney stones and nobody knew.
Yeah. And he's dead on right that,
Dude,
if he was there, I have been in the hospital room with my wife rubbing her feet.
Yeah.
Rubbing her, she especially likes her hands, but whatever it is to provide some comfort. And he's right. They probably would have said, we've been taking care of this and there's something else going on.
Something else is off.
Yeah.
Because you're simply with them.
Right. And he's talking about the Hickman line that she's got and all the other complications. When he said the kidney stone thing, man, I literally, my blood just ran cold. I know if we were to show the video of us that I lost whatever color my body possesses.
You turned from...
Yeah, I turned from white to alabaster.
Translucent.
Yeah. So
to porridge.
Gross.
I just got
popcorn.
Yeah.
I mean, there's because I don't know. I mean, and I'm with him. Like, what, storm the castle? No, you can't do that. But that's where my heart would be.
No doubt.
I there's nothing. You're not putting up a wall between me. No way.
No.
Sorry, it's not happening. But at the same time, I like to say that now, but I wasn't in that position. There's no, because I also don't want to be in jail. So
I think if it was reversed I want to think that I would have the character that he had in handling the situation.
I think if it
was reversed, if I was the one in the hospital and Kirsten was the one that couldn't get in,
she would have burned down the building.
Like half of the nurses would be on the floor with me at the hospital as patients.
right.
Yeah. Like I sleep with a pillow like between my legs so that it takes some pressure off my back, and she's like, get the barrier out of here. Like there's got to be like this, just even if it's like barely touching. And I think that there's so much of a complication to how each one of us reacts to it. One of the questions that I didn't ask whenever he was on, and I hesitate to, like, I'm not going to ask the question, right?
Okay.
Danley is the only one of us that has full scope of perspective on what he's going through with the autoimmune disease, also having a son. Like, what has your challenge been? Here's the question I'm going to ask, avoiding the question I'm not going to, right?
Okay.
How difficult was it during that interview not to just like completely put yourself in his shoes?
I mean, right away when he started telling the story, I was like, I've been there.
Yeah.
We've had a bunch of close calls where we, like there was one time I remember driving home and we weren't sure what was going on. And this is after the Addison's diagnosis. So there's something else going on.
Sure.
Which I'm not going to go into her detail,
yeah,
but
that's literally a topic for another podcast. In some instance, yeah.
But yeah, I was driving home and I went, it's cancer. Like she has cancer.
Oof.
And it was like it was a dark ride home. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, thankfully it's not.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, right away when he started talking about the problems that she's had and in and out of the hospitals, and I completely relate to that.
And that we've thrown the C word around on the show before because it was It wasn't a firm diagnosis for me. It ended up not being that as it did for Heather. But once that word's out there, you can't take it back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once somebody says, okay, well, there's a possibility of cancer, then you're like,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
that's it. Dang.
Yeah. A difficult, but I think very worthwhile listen.
Yeah.
Another thing, I read this somewhere that I can't even pretend to tell you what this came from, but he was talking about.
It's probably the Washington Post.
No.
You're actually just a bad pretender in general.
We're talking a long time ago. I read this though, and it was dealing with the English language, and somebody asked somebody, like literary person, what is the strongest word in the English language?
Oh yeah.
The most powerful word that connects with every English speaking person, and the word's lonely.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That word loneliness is the strongest word in the English language. It carries the most potency, the most mass effect. Like it is.
I mean, you said the word, and I kind of cringed a little bit.
yeah.
Because
no one wants.
Yeah, to be alone and to be isolated and there is. I feel like, and even to connect this to the COVID thing, like this whole thing, all it has done is build up walls. I mean, everybody has to be alone because we have to quarantine. We have to be separated. We have to be isolated. We have to be, and I think it's driving some people in this generation crazy. Honestly.
Oh yeah.
And so, but it also connected to like when he was talking about nursing homes and things like that. Like my grandmother, who's at 95? No, 93, is in a nursing home just down the road that way, and can't see her. They won't let anybody in. It's not, I mean, my mom has sat outside the windows, sat and there. I mean, they cracked the window that much. So my 3-year-old grandmother who has hearing aids and can't hear a word she's saying because there's a window between them, and they won't open it all the way because
that's what we've experienced
the point.
as well.
So, I mean, but she can't hear. So yeah, now I can see you, but I mean, it was almost more frustrating. But that isolation is just.
I can't imagine being. I mean, and I haven't even thought about this, but he had mentioned giving birth.
Oh yeah,
alone.
Yeah, none of us can. No.
But I can't imagine, number one, being the father and being like, what do you mean I can't go?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my wife.
But definitely from the mother's perspective, like a lot of them, assuming that they're married or they're the significant others in their life, they go to Lamaze classes and they prepare for this, and you're the one that's going to be there and coach, hold her hand,
support,
whatever.
Everything. And
none of that. I had never thought of that.
And like that
has got to change.
Situation, right? If you think you're going to keep any of our moms
right.
out of the room, if they're like, even if whether it's their daughter-in-law, or whoever,
right.
If any of our wives were giving birth, our moms would burn down the hospital, so that they would be forced to bring them out to a place where they could be with them. Yeah. They would have them evacuate all of the patients so that our wife would give birth in the parking lot and our mother could be present.
Yeah, and mother's heart does not care about the law of the land.
No.
She cares about ripping whoever is messing with her baby into pieces.
Yeah, or what that little doctor who thinks he just knows so much. Well, man, thanks for hanging with us and listening to
Steve Reiter.
Yeah, we need to have him on again.
A rather tough episode.
We need to follow up with him.
I'm hoping whenever he's in Dallas, we can hang out with him.
Oh yeah,
yes,
yeah, or we can be on his podcast.
Either way,
he said he would hang out with us in Dallas and Los Angeles
and LA.
Yeah, that's true.
Open
now we can just get permission to go to Los Angeles. Hang out with Steve Z.
Hey, I've got an RV. Let's go.
Hey,
let's do it.
I'm in.
Go.
Well, thank you guys for listening to the Rev and the Rep. Glad to have Kyle back
and this guy.
Yeah.
It was another episode.
It was another episode, that's for sure. So make sure you check out the neveralonepandemic.org, holysmokes.club. and Facebook.com/neveralonepandemic to check out the hashtags and the ways that you can support Steve. And also make sure that you are writing your congressman or representative. If you think that this is something that is worth doing, you've got legislature on the state level and also on the national level. They need to know about what's been going on, and just on the most basic of Christian principles of loving your neighbor as yourself.
Yep.
You have, as Martin Luther says, if you're supposed to love your neighbor as yourself, there is no one that is more your neighbor than your spouse and your kids.
Yep.
So letting them know about these
Martin
stories. And
Luther?
The original Martin Luther, the father of the Reformation.
The 1195,
but really
95
close.
Theses. No, that's
Theses.
not it. Theses.
Yeah, there you go. That Martin Luther up top.
Well done.
Sweet.
So
got it. We nailed it.
So make sure that you're
Once
getting
again,
in
the
touch with them.
reprobate's bringing this one home.
Come on, baby. I'm just sliding into first. So
contact your Congress.
Contact
representatives. For
absolutely,
sure.
like we said, on the state and the national level.
And
support what Steve's doing if it's something that speaks to you, and then
go pick up a Comfortably Numb.
and
that is what I will be doing.
Hang out and do some Bible study.
That's right.
Yeah, all right.
Again, man, that sounds like an awesome club. You can get together and with other Christians and smoke a cigar and study the Bible. That sounds like it's up my alley.
It is one
I
of those
don't
things.
want to go to a regular Bible study. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, we've noticed. I will say,
but
there was this lady, the Kunkles.
What?
They're a husband and wife. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I
This
think,
is their last name.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brett and Aaron, I think, is what their names are.
I was like, what's a kunkel?
Yeah. So they were talking about, Brett is actually a member of Holy Smokes. He was featured on Steve's podcast, and he was talking about
Stevesy?
Yeah, Stevesy.
Our Stevesy?
Yeah.
Ours, yeah.
So he was featured on the podcast. They were talking about the ministry work that they do. And Aaron was saying that she started to smoke cigars a couple of years ago because she found out that like all these like conversations she wants to have with her husband, like he can't sit on the couch and talk to her because it just drives him nuts that he's not doing anything. But if she went into the backyard whenever he was smoking a cigar
with him,
she's like, I get it now. That's why guys do that, because like it gives them they're there to smoke the cigar, and if they have to talk because other people
and then you can have a real in-depth conversation.
Yeah, you have an opportunity.
Yep.
So she started buying him bigger cigars because it meant she could hold him hostage for longer if she.
It takes some of the,
which I think is awesome.
You know, as an introvert, it takes some of the anxiety away.
Are you an introvert?
Yeah.
He's a pocket introvert.
Yeah.
Which pocket?
Left.
Pocket sized.
Yeah.
No, it's nice.
Yeah.
You know?
It's good.
I was going to say something else.
So do we have to wait for Stevesy to get here so that we can bring Kyle on and have you can have your
Kristen? It's funny this morning, Kristen. There's apparently, and I'm not. This can go on or not, but
yeah, sure.
Apparently, Cabela's started a smoke bar.
Huh?
Like they're in Cabela's?
Okay. So, because Kristen used to work at Cabela's for a year.
Okay.
She worked at a year. And she was like, there's a brown building that I don't remember. And I don't know where it came from.
And it's like
I was like, pull it up on Google.
Like the Safari Lounge or something like that?
No. It's so, I was like, pull it up on Google and tell me what it is. But this is on the way in to work.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to pull it up real fast.
Yeah, to work, not to be confused with in the way into twerk.
into work.
You really rushed those words.
Twerking.
Into work.
Like the...
Cigars International Fort Worth is in the, like, Cabela's parking lot.
Huh.
And it is...
Wow.
It's a nice little lounge.
Yeah, and so for whoever...
Yeah, well, you could send us that picture and then we can just put it into the video.
And we're talking like...
Why?
Wow.
This is on...
Yeah,
it's
why?
done.
Why not? Why not just
it's done already.
Yeah, and you know...
Pro Fresh.
So, it looks very nice.
And she said... And I said, well...
That is the
I don't really smoke cigars. And she goes, well, you could.
Yep.
So I have endorsement. I mean,
there you go.
Sweet.
Okay.
That's the exact kind of place my wife would be like, no.
No.
Actually, that's not true at all. It's all good.
We're going to go to Bass Pro
Kirsten.
It's owned by the same people, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, she also she
Oh, it
doesn't.
is? I didn't know.
She likes catching fish.
Uh-huh.
She likes reeling the fish in.
Yeah.
She doesn't mind taking the fish off the hook. She doesn't
wanna
like
put
having
that-
to put your thumb in the fish's lip. She thinks it feels weird, and that's the part. I was like, what? She's like, yeah, that just seems cruel. Like you were forcing him to do that. I was like, you just stabbed
What
that
about
thing
the rest of
with 3 giant sharp hooks. And she was like, yeah, well, that's how you catch them.
Yeah, what? Duh.
Yeah, so you don't like the other thing? No, it's uncomfortable. I don't like it. It's weird.
Okay. They have
Alright,
gloves
sweet.
for that. It's okay.
Yeah. Do you want me to just do that?
I mean-
let's
I
just
mean,
not go
look,
fishing.
Look, wives are weird. So
Yep.
you just go with a lot of it. You just go, okay.
Having been married for 6 months and now being a marital expert,
Yeah.
I want to say thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Cool. We did it.